Now, can you see the slides? Again, this is going to be a little bit of delay, but I want to make sure that we are safe to continue. Just give me at least 1+1 in the chat, whatever it is, or LinkedIn or YouTube, that you can see the presentation with hacking JSON Web Tokens. And then I'm gonna switch over to the presentation. Measley says yes. That's great. So +1+1, yeah, pretty clear. Okay, so for those who may not know me yet, because I have invited my subscribers from the email list, but as I said, this is some kind of an experiment because we are streaming simultaneously to Twitter and LinkedIn. So my name is Bartosz Pietrucha, and I run devacademy.com and websecurityacademy.com. And today, I want to just challenge you a little bit what you think about JSON Web Tokens. I called it hacking JSON Web Tokens because literally we will go through a couple of ways how JSON Web Tokens can be compromised. So, but before we start, let's first build a foundation for our further discussion. We know that HTTP is stateless. So when the requests go back and forth, we need some kind of mechanism to maintain the state because of the stateless nature of HTTP. So when the user logs in, we want to make sure that once the user authenticates and authorizes against the system, they can actually use it without reassuring the system that this is their actual identity. So we want to maintain this state. And there are basically two well-known mechanisms to achieve this goal. Like very old, like from the beginning of the internet, approach is server-side session with session cookies. In this case, the server maintains a list of sessions, and every time there is a request coming from the browser to the server, there is a special session ID attached to this cookie. And based on that value, server can retrieve the information and build a context for this session. So for example, this session ID, of course, must be some kind of randomly generated so that it is not possible to guess or find someone else's session ID, because inside of this store that maintains the session context, we can have a lot of very critical information, like who is that person, what is the role, and maybe the pure fact if is that person logged in or not. So on the right side, you can see that I may have a dictionary of objects, and the session cookie ID may be 1, 2, 3. And if this cookie is present, the server would retrieve this object and know that this is John 31 with the role user and whatever else it is required to fulfill the request. But on the other hand, there is another approach when we want to have it in a stateless fashion. What does it mean in the stateless fashion? There is a common, very common approach, which is standardized by JSON Web Token, which is a proposed standard of Internet Engineering Task Force, and it's fairly fresh because it was standardized in May 2015 under RFC 7519. And in this approach, the information about the user or the session of the user is inside of the token. And this token is attached usually, it's not the only way, but usually into authorization header under bearer token. And this has very severe consequences because, and this is the topic that I want to discuss, is it secure? Because here we are moving around this data in the token and only leave the part of validating the token's authenticity and integrity based on cryptographic algorithms. So I'm going to make a pause and look at the chat if we are all fine, all good. I don't see any interruptions. So we are going to head over to like 5 points I want to stress out. And as an output of this session, I would like to make you more aware of what can actually go wrong with those tokens. Because what I feel is that there's a lot of hype over JSON Web Tokens and not enough stress on the security. So let's continue. And first of all, like very obvious, but this token is basically a data structure encoded with base 64. If you take this token that is sent to your browser, wherever it is maybe in cookie, maybe in authorization header, or maybe somewhere else. But you can take it and you can decode it and you can read everything inside, which gives you some insight of how the system works. For example, I can see that the information inside the token is username, role, some other elements inside of the payload. So first of all, I would think of it that this is public information. This is not a token that is like opaque that you cannot read. You can read it, and putting too much sensitive data, maybe first wrong decision. Second point I want to come with here is something that actually blew my mind a little bit, because if you open official documentation, this RFC 7519 from Internet Engineering Task Force, the official documentation claims that there are two algorithms required in the standard. First is here HS256, and the second one is none. And a couple of years ago, when those JSON Web Tokens libraries were popping out over the internet, a lot of them would allow you to bypass any integrity and authenticity check by just saying that there is no algorithm for this token. So what I mean by that, for example, you can look at, I just took one of the examples, Fusion Auth library. It is from 2018. If you look closely, this is an issue from May the 2nd, 2018. JSON Web Token signature validation can be bypassed. And what could an attacker do? Just put here, I'm an admin, or whoever else I want to be, and just say algorithm none. And in this case, this library, according to the specification, would just say, okay, if algorithm is none, I don't need to verify this token, which is actually mind-blowing. And they actually did a fix. And the fix is in that commit. You can actually find it in the repository. They are fixing with simple if. If header algorithm equals algorithm none, then we throw some exception. But before that fix, you could just bypass it. And there are numerous cases of this kind of wrong implementation because of just this, I don't know actually how to think about it, but since the specification said we have to have none algorithm, but actually this breaks anything related to usefulness of this token in the battlefield if implemented in this way. Number 3, I'm gonna step over to chat and see we are all good. I just make sure that if there are any questions. By the way, we'll have a discussion panel at the end, so I'm just double checking if everything's okay. I'm streaming to 3 different platforms for the first time in my life, so I'm making sure that everything's worked fine. Number three is a little bit more advanced, but I can send you a link in the chat that actually points exactly how to execute this attack. But here, the assumption is that since HS256 is a required algorithm in this token, here's the thing: it uses one key, a secret key that is known only to the server. that is used to sign and verify. So it is like a symmetric algorithm. But there are other algorithms like RS256, which is an algorithm that uses two keys, one to sign and different one to verify. Usually the public one is to verify. This is an asymmetric algorithm. And the case that was also found in some libraries is that you could use publicly known key to sign it as if it was RS256, and then change the algorithm to HS256 with this newly generated signature. And in some cases, in some libraries, you could pass, which actually gives you another opportunity to craft the payload of the token to your own imagination. You could be admin, super admin, whoever you want. So if you want, I can send you a link later on which describes this attack in detail, but I want to just make this like bold statement. JSON Web Token is not a golden bullet for every problem that I feel like a lot of people are saying JSON Web Token is the best approach to, use in modern web applications. Brute forcing the secret, number 4. So imagine that everything is fine. You have all set up, but you use some kind of secret which is not so strong. For example, you use, because this secret is known to the server, let's assume this is a symmetric algorithm that use the same secret to sign and verify the token. So imagine that you log into the system, you get your token, and then you're trying to guess in brute force fashion what secret was used to sign this token. Since you have the payload, you have the content, and you can try to guess, okay, I'm going to try to sign this token with like millions of possible cases, and I can use very strong machines because I don't have to call server anymore. I have it locally. So I can take this and I can use like some, Google Cloud or any other infrastructure to try to guess this secret. And once I find this secret, again, I can create as many different valid tokens as I can. So the thing here is that and here's the example. If you go to JWT.io, which is like a nice debugger for JSON token, and place the token, you can see a representation of what I'm saying, and you see that there's a secret here. And the question that you may pose is, what secret gives that exact token string? Right? And you can use John the Ripper, JWT Brute, which is .NET library, and try to find and try to break this token, which is actually mind-blowing if you were not aware of that, of course. So the thing is that you always want to use a strong secret, so that it was very hard, even if possible, to guess the secret. And according to auth0.com, make sure to pick a shared key as long as the length of the hash. So for HS256, that would be a 256-bit key minimum, right? So always bear that in mind. Number 5. Cross-site scripting. So if you want to store somehow this token in your web application, I'm talking about web application, either it's a cookie, local storage, or session storage. If there is cross-site scripting, you are basically, it's basically game over, because if one can steal this token, it's basically very hard to mitigate unless you actually implement some way of invalidating the token. But pure stateful token is just a stateful token which has expiry date, and one of the recommendations is to have a short expiry date, like 20 minutes after issuing. This token should be considered invalid. Other approach is to make some kind of blacklisting, but in my opinion, when you have stateless token and you want to implement blacklisting, you're actually making it stateful, because blacklisting or even whitelisting requires storing the list of tokens on the backend in some store, which basically is not stateless anymore, which is actually stateful. So this is very also important consideration. Another thing, some of the libraries, even, because basically this is the case of the libraries, they are mis-implementing it. Some of them, you can actually see here a screenshot from a list of JSON Web Token libraries that didn't check by default the expiry date. This timestamp after token should be considered invalid. So for example, system identity model tokens JSON Web Token checks the expiry timestamp. But for example, JOS, JWT in some version was not checking this. JOS RT in some version was not checking this expiry. So even the token expires, it could be used against the system. So this is another important consideration. So double check your JSON Web Token library. I want to sum up with some kind of points. Like JSON Web Tokens are not bad or good. They have bad points and good points. First of all, it's stateless, so it's easier for example, front-end developers to just use it, send it, and just validate it, right? Or even like in general, it may be easier to just, I just create a token, send it, store it, send it back, validate, and it's fine. I don't need to keep track of sessions on the server, which might seem a little bit easier. And horizontal scaling is easy because you don't have the state, which means you can like scale it as far as you can. And one of the most important, in my opinion, points here is that we can talk to multiple or any origins and domains. We don't have to use this because when you have cookie, you are talking only to a given origin, a given domain, right? But what if you want to pass your credentials to a different domain? This is great way of utilizing JSON token. I want to talk with multiple domains. I don't want to just talk with one single domain. I have multiple, servers, APIs, different domains, different origins, and then this could be good. But on the other side, it's just a cached authorization, right? Or you can say authentication, depending on which state you want to call it, that it is used for authentication, and on which state it's used for authorization, right? Because if you put the claims inside of this token and says this is an admin or this is a super user, and then it just compares it on the server side, I mean, there's like a very slight very thin line between authorization and authentication in this case. It cannot be invalidated. Blacklisting required, which actually makes it stateful, right? Because you need to list those tokens on the backend. So one of the approach may be short lifetime. It should be short lifetime for the token. When scaling, secret has to be shared between nodes. So it may also create some problems. If you have multiple teams, multiple domains, multiple nodes, and you have a secret, and then you have to share that secret, that looks kind of like counterintuitive, unless the asymmetric algorithm is used. And storing in web application is very problematic because, as I explained, once you have cross-site scripting, these features like keep me locked in, it's really hard. It's like a trade-off. Either you care about security or you care about user experience. It's a trade-off, and it's very hard to do it having in mind security and having in mind the user experience. For example, this feature that allows the user to be logged in for a long time, for like long-lived session. Oh, guys, I told you it's going to be short. It was 20 minutes. we are done with the official part. I just want to invite you to my free. Before we jump into Q&A session discussion, if you go into Tuesday Web Security Academy.com, you can receive free weekly web security tips. If I have some of my subscribers, it would be really heartwarming if you write a comment. What do you think about those tips, so that we can show a comment to people who just discover my work. I would just look at the chat later on. So it's totally free every Tuesday. Some bite-sized tip. Tuesday websecurityacademy.com. Or there's no huge pitch. You can also check out my courses under courses.devacademy.com. For example, Web Security Fundamentals, which cost just $37, is going to show you in theory and practice everything from the perspective of web security fundamentals. Courses.devacademy.com. And the last slide before the Q&A, my official premium program, websecurityacademy.com, is not yet another online course. It's a complete 12-week program designed to provide developers with all necessary hands-on skills and knowledge to build fully secure full-stack web applications. You can sign for the waiting list because this is running periodically, websecurityacademy.com. And now, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to double down on the content on this. If you are watching it on YouTube, because somebody might be watching it on LinkedIn, for example. But if you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. And that's all. It's time for the discussion. I'm going to head over to streaming platform. And ask you, how did you like it? We have a couple of people. Let me just make sure that you know. This is the newsletter. And this is the premium program that you can sign up. I'm just going to leave it here and just look at the comments. My friends, Alan, Adam, Kenny, Boris, Miroslav, do you have any questions regarding these ideas? Because I want to just discuss. I just pointed out a couple of, in my opinion, take into consideration. Just let's make a discussion. You guys see the questions in the chat. I see all of them. And now I'm going to wait for a couple of them and pick them to the screen so that we can discuss. Alan, question: cookie or local storage, and why not? I mean, they both have their strengths and applicability of context. Cookie, first of all, is considered more secure, and you can use HTTP only flag, secure flag, so that it would be not accessible from the JavaScript, so that cross-site scripting is not a thing, because if you cannot read cookie that is flagged as HTTP only, which means it's not accessible from the JavaScript, you can send it in a more secure way. By the way, but cookie has some kind of limitation. It is scoped to the same origin. My friends, same origin policy is one of the most important security measure over the internet. So this brings up us to another question. So how can we send those credentials across origins, right? Maybe in the header, but then we need to have it somewhere in accessible storage from JavaScript. So maybe local storage is the thing to read it and pass it through. Miroslav says, I didn't know it was so easy to bypass the JSON Web Token in the past. Now you know. Actually, my friends, I always like to say that there are two kinds of awareness. You can know that you don't know something, but if you don't know that you don't know something, it's totally different way of unawareness. Thank you. Dennis asks, did you had an experience when SQL injection was possible in JSON Web Token? I'm not sure, because SQL injection is a little bit different issue than JSON Web Token problems. So, to be honest, no. I'm looking through the questions. Michael says, "Thank you. Can you also tell us about the refresh token user cases?" Yes. So, for example, when you look at OAuth framework, especially OAuth 2 with OpenID Connect, this is like standardized way to make this, let's say, cross-origin authentication and authorization, because okay, I'm not going to go into much details. You can also check out my course or just read some of the blog posts on my websites. But in general, refresh token are the good solution to short-lived tokens only if you are able to securely store them on your client side. So if you place them in local storage, it is prone to cross-site scripting. If you have some not thin web client, but some kind of like a rich backend server that is able to store this refresh token in a secure fashion, that it is not publicly visible for anyone, that might be a thing. But if you think of this, there are flows, because OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect, it's like a robust framework, and on the top of that we have this OpenID Connect that is actually providing you with multiple flows, and different flows are applicable in different scenarios. And if you take one of the flows that is that was designed to be used with web applications, implicit flow, it actually does not allow you to have refresh tokens at all, because it is too dangerous, right? So this is it's a very deep topic. I just want to stress out that if you can store refresh token securely, I'm not saying about local storage, I'm not saying about session storage, I'm saying securely, that no one can take it like to the public, then that might be a good idea. Adam, Bartek is best teacher for Angular and security. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, we have Dennis. This is the case, and it is described here. Medium hacking JSON Web Tokens, JWTs. Yeah, guys, make sure that you make your research, because it's not that easy. Mr. Harsha says, Harsha is always confused about token-based auth. I can agree with you. It may be really hard to grasp. That's why I created my own courses, because I spend a lot of time digging deep into the topics. You can check the courses or the programs, and yeah, that's correct. How big will the token be if there is a lot of clients? That's another issue. if you use a token in this self-contained fashion and push a lot of stuff, a lot of claims, a lot of data, you see that this creates another issue. It's going to be heavy, which will hurt your application's performance. If you have a lot of stuff inside and the token is heavy and you send it back and forth all the time in every request, your performance of your application is going to hurt, right? If you use a session cookie and you have like a fixed length for the session ID, but it has to be long enough to be cryptographically safe to use it as an identifier. Because if I steal your cookie and you know your session ID, because this is, for example, if you are using a browser and I look in your code and I look at your website and I get your session ID and put it, like pull into my application, I can actually impersonate you so that the system would think that this is you. So with session cookies, they can be short, but they cannot be too short because they have to have high entropy in the fashion of cryptographical jargon, that they have to be long enough also to be securely used as a random identifier with high entropy and enough length to not to be able to be guessed, because this is also important to make it secure as possible. But again, if you use fixed length, it doesn't matter how long a list of claims is you on the backend side if you store them on the server side in the session object on the backend. Yeah, guys, I was not talking about the fundamentals of JSON Web Tokens. What are the signatures? What are the other mechanics? I assume that you are aware of that. But for example, we just wanted to bring up some different issues that actually are inherent to JSON Web Tokens that I believe you should be aware of. Okay, guys, this was a very short, but I believe useful session. Michał says, last question. If you would start a new web project right now, would you use JSON Web Token for authentication? It depends on the system architecture. So I believe that if you have a simple web application that is on the same origin, I mean that the backend and the frontend are served from the same domain, I see no point in using JSON Web Token. 0 point. Because if I can use cookies and if I use the same domain, right, so that the cookies can be used and I can use old battle-proven session cookies, I would go with session cookies. But if I have a requirement to talk to cross-origin systems, that brings up a case for maybe using JSON tokens. Johan says, do you host session each Tuesday? Actually, I don't know. If you like it, we can have it. It was an experiment because I'm using this nice tool for streaming that allows me to stream simultaneously to different platforms. We are live on YouTube, we are live on LinkedIn, and we are live on Twitter. But basically, what is every Tuesday is this. So this is a newsletter with some small knowledge pills that I send out every Tuesday. So you're welcome to join to have it. And when it comes to live sessions, I don't know, maybe. But if you want to chat with me and propose something or suggest something, the newsletter and email communication is the best way to stay in touch. Okay. My friends, thank you very much for this session. I thought I'm gonna have it for 20 minutes or so. We are almost, I see we're live almost 40 minutes. If you wanna get in touch, you know where to find me. We are finishing now. Thanks for today, man. Thanks you all, guys. See you next time. Maybe on Twitter, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe on newsletter. I love to help people understand stuff in depth, and see you soon.